My family trusted my sister's lies, cut me out of their lives, and left me to suffer. Now, they're facing homelessness and expect me to rescue them, but I chose to let them deal with the consequences of their own actions. Before I dive into the heart of this story, it's important to understand where I came from. I'm a 28-year-old man who grew up in what seemed like a stable, upper-middle-class family in the suburbs of Chicago. From the outside, my parents appear to have everything under control. My father worked as a financial advisor at a respected firm downtown and earned a comfortable income that provided a good life for our family. My mother worked part-time as a real estate agent, but she was far more invested in maintaining our family's image. She was involved in every community organization imaginable and made sure we looked perfect in every holiday photo and social gathering. I was their biological son, the kid who always seemed to do everything right. I earned excellent grades without much effort, excelled in sports, and was respectful toward adults. Of course, I wasn't perfect. Like most teenagers, I occasionally got into trouble. I stuck a few beers with friends, threw some loud parties, and made my share of mistakes, but nothing serious enough to threaten the reputation my mother worked so hard to protect. When I was 10 years old, my parents adopted Lily, who was only 3 at the time. My mother had always dreamed of having a daughter. I still remember the day they brought her home. She was tiny, with huge brown eyes and a smile that could win anyone over within minutes. I'll be honest, I wasn't thrilled at first. Suddenly, I wasn't the center of attention anymore. Everything revolved around Lily. Her first day of preschool, her dance recitals, and every adorable outfit she wore. Looking back now, it was simply normal sibling jealousy. But at the time, I felt like I'd been pushed aside. As the years passed, though, I believed we had a pretty normal brother-sister relationship. Nothing extraordinary, but nothing bad either. We argued from time to time, yet I always looked out for her. When she was in 2nd grade, a boy at school kept pulling her hair and shoving her around on the playground. I was in 9th grade then. One day, I walked her to school and had a very direct conversation with the kid responsible. After that, he never bothered her again. I even taught Lily some basic self-defense skills, including how to throw a proper punch if she ever truly needed to protect herself. That's what older brothers do. By the time I reached my senior year of college, life seemed to be going exactly according to plan. I was the captain of our Division II baseball team and had a realistic chance of playing minor league baseball. Academically, I maintained a 3.85 GPA while majoring in business administration with a minor in finance. I had a close-knit group of friends, the kind of people who would help you move apartments or pick you up at 3 in the morning if your car broke down. I also spent a lot of time training. I've been lifting weights seriously since high school, and by college I was in the best shape of my life. I could bench press 315 pounds for reps, squat 405 pounds, and deadlift 495 pounds. Like many gym enthusiasts, I worked hard for that classic V-shaped physique, broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and visible abs year-round. I'm not saying any of this to brag. I'm simply giving you a picture of where I was in life. I had dated a few women seriously over the years, but none of those relationships lasted. The truth is, I was focused on building my future. My father had connections with several investment firms around Chicago, and after graduation, I was scheduled to begin a management training program at one of the largest companies in the area. My life plans seemed straightforward. Finish school, maybe play baseball for a few more years if the opportunity presented itself, then build a successful career in finance. Eventually, I'd meet the right woman, get married, have children, and live the kind of life I'd always imagined. At least, that was the plan. By this time, Lily was 15 years old and a sophomore in high school. She had become the stereotypical artistic theater kid, always involved in school plays and often reacting dramatically to everything. But that was just part of being a teenager. She had her own life, her own interests, and her own group of friends. Whenever I came home from college during breaks, we would sit down together, share a meal, and talk about whatever was happening in our lives. Or at least, that's what I believed. Looking back now, I can see warning signs that I completely missed at the time. There were moments when Lily seemed resentful whenever our parents praised my accomplishments in baseball. She occasionally made comments about how easy my life supposedly was. She also had a habit of telling elaborate stories about things that happened at school, stories that often seemed too dramatic to be entirely true. But hindsight makes everything clearer. The day everything changed was a Tuesday in October during my senior year. Our baseball coach had just put us through an absolutely brutal practice after we lost a weekend series against our biggest rivals. My legs felt like rubber, and my shoulder ached from spending too much time in the bullpen. Still, it was the satisfying kind of exhaustion that comes from pushing yourself to your limits. After practice, I took a shower, changed into jeans and a hoodie, and headed toward my truck, a Ford F-150 my parents had helped me purchase for my 20th birthday. As I walked across the parking lot, I checked my phone. That's when I saw it. 37 missed calls, 54 text messages. Most of them were from family members and friends. The messages were shocking. "What's wrong with you? How could you do that? You're disgusting. You're dead to us." Immediately, my heart started racing. My first thought was that someone in the family had died, maybe my grandmother or grandfather. Panicking, I called my father right away. "What the hell is going on?" I asked. The moment he answered, I knew something was terribly wrong. His voice was colder than I had ever heard before. "Get your ass home. Right now," he said. "Don't go anywhere else." Before I could ask another question, he hung up. I stood frozen in the parking lot, staring at my phone and trying to make sense of what was happening. My mind raced as I attempted to piece everything together. I called my mother, but she didn't answer. I called my best friend from high school, who still lived near my parents, but he ignored my call as well. It felt as though everyone had suddenly decided that I was untouchable. The 20-minute drive home passed in a blur. My stomach was tied in knots the entire way. NPR was playing through the truck speakers, but I couldn't focus on a single word being said. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, I immediately noticed several unfamiliar vehicles parked outside, including my Uncle Mike's truck. Mike was my father's younger brother, a construction contractor known for his short temper. He had never particularly liked me, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. Before I even had a chance to step out of my truck, Uncle Mike stormed off the front porch. He yanked open my driver's side door, grabbed a fistful of my shirt, and slammed me against the side of the vehicle. "I'm going to kill you!" he screamed, his face only inches from mine. Spit flew from his mouth and landed on my face. I could smell alcohol on his breath. His eyes were wild with rage, unlike anything I had ever witnessed before. Under normal circumstances, I could have easily broken free. Mike was 50 years old, overweight, and out of shape. I was a 22-year-old college athlete in peak condition, but I was so shocked that I couldn't even react. My father and Uncle Steve rushed over and pulled him away from me. "Get inside." "Now," my father said coldly, refusing to look me in the eye. I climbed the front steps and walked into the house. The living room was packed. My mother sat on the couch with red, swollen eyes from crying. Both sets of grandparents were there, along with aunts, uncles, and several close family friends. And then there was Lily. She was curled up beside my grandmother, sobbing into her shoulder. The moment I stepped into the room, complete silence fell over everyone. Every single person stared at me, not with confusion, not with concern, with disgust, with hatred. A chill ran through my body. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, scanning the room desperately for some explanation. My mother looked up at me. The expression on her face was one I had never seen before. Pure anger, pure contempt. "How could you do that?" she cried. "To your own sister? What are you talking about?" I asked, completely lost. My father stepped forward. The calm, professional demeanor he always carried as a financial advisor was gone. He looked like a man barely holding himself together. "Lily told us everything," he said. "Everything about how you've been sneaking into her room at night for years." The words hit me like a freight train. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin around me. "What?" I stammered. "That's insane. I never touched her." Lily immediately began crying even harder. "You told me nobody would believe me," she sobbed. "You said you'd hurt me if I ever told anyone. You said it was our secret. That's a lie," I shouted. Shock instantly turned into anger. "I never said any of that. I never did anything to you. What is going on?" Uncle Mike tried to charge at me again, but my father and Uncle Steve restrained him. "My buddy's a cop," Mike yelled. You're going to prison, you piece of garbage. They'll love you there. I desperately tried to defend myself. I explained that none of it was true. I pointed out how ridiculous the accusations were. But it was like speaking to a wall. Nobody was listening. As the confrontation continued, Lily kept adding more details to her story. She claimed the abuse had started when she was 10 years old and I had come home from college during Christmas break. She said it had happened repeatedly over the years. She accused me of threatening her, our mother, and our father if she ever told anyone. Every word was a lie, yet everyone around her nodded sympathetically. They comforted her, they reassured her, and they looked at me as if I were a monster. The entire situation felt surreal, as though I had somehow been dropped into an alternate reality where truth no longer mattered. Then my father finally snapped. He had always been a controlled man. I had never seen him become physically violent, but something inside him broke. Without warning, he stepped forward and threw a powerful right hook. The punch connected directly with my jaw. I crashed to the floor. Blood filled my mouth where my teeth had cut into the inside of my cheek. "Get your things and get out," he shouted. "You're no son of mine." He stood over me, flexing the hand he had just used to hit me. Nearby, I noticed several trash bags. My mother had already packed some of my clothes. My father grabbed my wallet and removed every card connected to him. Credit cards, insurance cards, everything. "Dad, please," I begged through the blood dripping from my split lip. "This isn't true. You've known me my entire life. You know I would never do something like this." He didn't care. He grabbed my shirt, dragged me to the front door, and shoved me down the porch steps. I landed hard on my shoulder. I felt something crack immediately. Later, doctors would tell me it was a minor shoulder separation. The bags of clothing came flying after me. Then my baseball equipment. "If you ever come near this family again," my father shouted, "I'll kill you myself." Then he slammed the door. And just like that, it was over. I sat alone on the front lawn. Blood covered my face. My shoulder throbbed with pain. Neighbors peeked through their windows, watching the chaos unfold. In less than an hour, my entire life had been destroyed. That night, I parked my truck in the lot beside a local baseball field. I sat there for hours, trying to understand what had happened. Sleep never came. I replayed the entire nightmare over and over in my head. How could Lily do this? How could my parents believe her without asking a single question? By morning, my jaw had swollen badly and turned deep purple. My shoulder hurt so much that I could barely lift my arm. Desperate and with nowhere else to go, I called one of my teammates, Ryan. He agreed to let me stay on his couch for a week. His roommates weren't thrilled about the arrangement, but they tolerated me. Over the following days, I called, texted, and emailed every member of my family. My grandparents, my aunts and uncles, anyone who might listen, but nobody responded. I reached out to everyone I had ever considered family. My cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and people who had known me since I was a child. Not a single person replied. The only response I received came from my father. "Contact us again, and I'll file a restraining order. As far as we're concerned, you no longer exist." Reading those words felt like another punch to the gut. Ryan did his best to help. "Man, you need to go to the police," he told me. "File a report about your dad assaulting you. Get ahead of this before it gets worse." But I couldn't bring myself to do it. A part of me simply refused to accept that my life had actually fallen apart. I kept believing that eventually my parents would come to their senses and realize how ridiculous the accusation was. The truth was I was terrified. What if Lily never backed down? What if everyone continued believing her instead of me? How was I supposed to prove that something never happened? 2 weeks later, another disaster hit. I received an email from my university informing me that my tuition payment was overdue. My parents had canceled the payment midway through the semester. I immediately went to the financial aid office and tried to secure an emergency loan, but without a cosigner and with almost no credit history, I had no options. To stay enrolled at all, I was forced to reduce most of my classes to part-time status and start working full-time. At first, my baseball coach was understanding and allowed me to remain on the team. But between classes and my new night job working security at a bar, I missed so many practices that I barely saw any playing time. My grades collapsed. I went from being on the dean's list to barely passing my courses. Meanwhile, rumors began spreading. Someone in my family told someone else, who told someone else. And before long, the story had reached people far beyond my hometown. Nobody openly called me a predator to my face. They didn't have to. I could see it in the way people looked at me. Conversations would suddenly stop when I entered a room. Classmates would avoid sitting near me. If I sat beside a woman in class, she often found a reason to move elsewhere. The accusation followed me everywhere. For months later, my truck broke down. The engine block cracked. The repair costs were several $1,000s. Money I simply didn't have. Without transportation, I lost the delivery job I had picked up in addition to my security work. Soon after, I was evicted from the rundown apartment I shared with 2 other guys because I could no longer afford my share of the rent. With nowhere else to go, I started sleeping in the baseball team's equipment shed. Coach quietly gave me the access code. I showered in the locker room and stretched the last of my cafeteria meal plan by limiting myself to 1 meal a day. One freezing night in February, Coach found me there. The temperature outside was below 0. I was wearing 3 hoodies and wrapped inside a sleeping bag, using my duffel bag as a pillow. Instead of getting angry, he sat down beside me on the concrete floor. "Son," he said quietly, "what the hell happened to you?" For the first time since everything started, someone genuinely wanted to know. So I told him everything. The accusation, my family's reaction, being cut off financially, losing my apartment, losing my truck, losing my future. When I finally finished, he didn't accuse me of lying. He didn't even tell me whether he believed me. He simply sat there silently for a moment. Then he nodded. "You can stay here until the semester ends," he said. "After that, we'll figure something else out." The next day, he brought me a space heater and a quality air mattress. Once a week, he invited me to dinner at his home. His wife always packed leftovers for me to take back. It wasn't a huge gesture, but it meant everything. For the first time in months, I felt like someone still cared. I managed to finish the academic year with a 2.1 GPA, barely avoiding academic probation. But baseball was over for me. The passion that had once driven me was gone. After the semester ended, Coach helped me secure a summer position at a wilderness program for troubled teenagers in Colorado. The irony wasn't lost on me. Still, it provided a paycheck, a staff cabin to live in, and regular meals. That fall, instead of returning to college, I stayed with the program and became a full-time wilderness guide. My days were spent hiking mountains, teaching survival skills, and supervising wealthy teenagers whose parents had run out of ideas. Physically, I rebuilt myself. Carrying 50-pound packs up mountain trails, chopping wood, and constructing shelters every day transformed my body. Within 6 months, I had gained 15 pounds of solid muscle. Mentally, however, I was falling apart. At night, I drank heavily with the other guides until I blacked out. Whenever I had time off, I experimented with whatever substances I could find. Marijuana, LSD, mushrooms, cocaine. I wasn't being careful. I simply didn't care. I was trying to numb the pain of losing everything. Eventually, my self-destruction caught up with me. One of the guides died in a climbing accident. It was a tragedy that might have been prevented if I hadn't shown up that day, exhausted and hungover. Afterward, the program director called me into his office. "Jake," he said, "when you're focused, you're one of our best guides. The kids respect you. You're excellent in the field." Then his expression hardened. "But when you're like this, you're a liability. I can't trust you with kids' lives while you're destroying yourself." The next day, I was fired. For the following year, I lived out of a beat-up 1998 Honda Civic that I had bought for $1,200 in cash. I worked whatever jobs I could find. Bar bouncer, event security, construction labor, day jobs, anything that paid and didn't ask too many questions about my past. I avoided women completely. I avoided families. If a child sat too close to me in a restaurant, I would get up and leave. The fear of being falsely accused again had become overwhelming. The nightmares were constant. I dreamed about being sent to prison. I dreamed about inmates discovering what I had supposedly done. I would wake up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding so violently that I thought I was having a heart attack. Then one night, while working security at a college bar in Fort Collins, I saw someone from my old university. He had been a football player while I was there. The moment our eyes met, I knew he recognized me. And unfortunately, by the end of the night, Everyone was staring at me and making comments loud enough for me to hear. Predator. Disgusting. Someone ought to teach him a lesson. I did my best to ignore them and focus on my job. Around 2 in the morning, after escorting the last guests out of the bar, I headed toward my car. That's when they jumped me. 3 of the same guys from earlier had been waiting in the parking lot. They called me a pedophile, a predator. They said they were going to make sure I could never hurt anyone again. I fought back. I landed several solid punches and definitely broke one guy's nose. But it was 3 against 1, and they had caught me completely by surprise. The odds were never in my favor. When it was over, I was left with 3 broken ribs, a fractured eye socket, a dislocated shoulder, and a severe concussion. The guy with the broken nose must have panicked because the moment another vehicle pulled into the parking lot, all 3 of them ran. The driver who arrived called an ambulance. I spent 2 nights in the hospital. When I was discharged, I had nowhere to go, no health insurance, and a medical bill totaling nearly $17,000 that I had no chance of paying. The pain medication barely helped. My injuries prevented me from working. I spent my nights sleeping in my car in Walmart parking lots and cleaning myself in gas station restrooms whenever I could lift my arms high enough. Eventually, I reached my breaking point. I was done, completely done. One rainy night, I drove to an old bridge outside town. It was high enough that anyone jumping from it wouldn't survive. I parked my Honda Civic, walked to the middle of the bridge, and climbed over the railing. Every movement sent waves of pain through my broken ribs. I stood there for what felt like forever. Rain soaked my clothes as I stared down into the dark water below. My phone was still in my hand. For 3 years, it had remained silent. No messages, no phone calls, no contact from my family. Nobody was coming for me. Nobody cared whether I lived or died. Bit cold for a swim, don't you think? The voice startled me so badly that I nearly lost my balance. I grabbed the railing with my good arm as pain shot through my ribs. When I turned around, I saw an elderly man standing there. He looked to be in his 70s. He wore a raincoat and carried a fishing rod. "Go away," I muttered, my voice shaking. "Can't do that, son," he replied calmly, as if we were having a casual conversation on a sunny afternoon. "You see, if I walk away and you jump, then in some way that becomes my responsibility." "It's not your problem," I said. "It became my problem the moment I saw you," he answered. "That's how life works." He stepped a little closer, not aggressively, just steadily. "My name's Frank, retired Marine Corps. I've seen plenty of men standing at their breaking point." Then he looked directly at me. "You want to tell me what is you standing on the wrong side of that railing? You wouldn't understand. Try me." I'm still not entirely sure why I opened up to him. Maybe it was because I believed I was about to die anyway. Maybe it was because he was the first stranger in years who didn't immediately look at me like I was a monster. Or maybe it was because something about him reminded me of my grandfather, the one member of my family who might have believed me if dementia hadn't stolen him away first. Whatever the reason, I told him everything. The accusation, being disowned, losing my family, the years of isolation, the struggle to survive, the pain, all of it. When I finally finished, Frank simply nodded, the same way Coach had years earlier. Then he said something I would never forget. "Son, you've been carrying this burden by yourself for far too long." He paused, put it down for one night. "Come get a hot meal, some dry clothes, and tomorrow we'll talk with clear heads." I looked at him in disbelief. "Why would you help someone like me?" I asked. "You don't know whether I'm telling the truth." Even in the darkness and rain, Frank's eyes remained sharp. "I've been reading men for 50 years, he said, "in combat and in civilian life." He studied me for a moment. "You're either telling the truth, or you're the best liar I've ever met." Then he shrugged. "Either way, death is permanent. Dinner isn't." I could have ignored him. I could have jumped anyway. Sometimes I still wonder why I didn't. But something about his certainty and calmness in the middle of my storm convinced me to climb back over that railing. Frank's house was small but immaculate. Everything was organized with military precision. Books were arranged perfectly on shelves. Shoes were lined up neatly by the front door. Nothing was out of place. He lent me a set of dry clothes that had once belonged to his son, who had been killed in Afghanistan 10 years earlier. Then he practically ordered me to take a hot shower while he prepared dinner. That night, I slept on Frank's couch. For the first time in years, I had truly slept. No nightmares, no panic, just sleep. The following morning, Frank cooked breakfast, eggs, bacon, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Then he surprised me. He offered me a job. Frank owned a small security company that specialized in executive protection, event security, and other high-end services for wealthy clients. We need a young guy who's strong, reliable, can follow orders, and knows how to keep his mouth shut, he said. I stared at him. Why would you trust me with something like that? You barely know me. I was standing on a bridge ready to end my life last night. Frank looked me directly in the eye. Because a man who stands at the edge and chooses to step back still has something worth fighting for, even if he can't see it yet. Then a faint smile appeared on his face. And because if you screw me over, I know exactly where to find you. For the next 6 months, I lived in Frank's guest room while working for his company. Frank was tough. Every morning started at 5 o'clock. Mandatory workouts. Strict discipline. No alcohol on work nights. No excuses. He forced me to see doctors for my injuries and personally paid the medical bills, insisting that I could reimburse him once I got back on my feet. Despite his strictness, he was fair. The company paid well. He taught me about investing and personal finance. He showed me how to dress professionally, communicate with clients, and carry myself with confidence again. Most importantly, he helped me become a functioning person once more. He also insisted that I begin therapy. The therapist was an old Vietnam veteran and longtime friend of his who specialized in helping people cope with trauma and PTSD. At first, I resisted, but looking back, it may have been one of the most important decisions of my life. That at first, I resisted the idea of therapy, but Frank refused to accept my excuses. You took more than a physical hit, son, he told me. Your mind took one too. If you're going to keep working for me, you need to get your head straight. As much as I hated admitting it, he was right. Therapy helped. Slowly, session by session, I began to understand that what had happened to me wasn't my fault. I learned that I didn't deserve what had been done to me and that I wasn't permanently broken, no matter how much I felt that way. After 6 months, I had saved enough money to move into a small apartment of my own. It wasn't anything impressive. No luxury finishes. No fancy views. But it was mine. It was clean, safe, and represented a fresh start. At the same time, I enrolled in business management courses at the local community college and began earning specialized certifications in the security industry. Over time, Frank became something very close to the father I had lost. He never pressured me to reconnect with my family. He never encouraged me to try clearing my name. Instead, he would always say the same thing. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Focus on winning the war. Build a life they can never take away from you. A year after I started working for him, Frank assigned me to oversee security and art gallery opening hosted by his niece. At the time, he claimed he was simply helping out his sister. Looking back, I'm convinced he was playing matchmaker. That was the night I met Sophie. She wasn't anything like I had imagined. Frank had described her as brilliant, independent, and unwilling to tolerate nonsense from anyone. He wasn't wrong. But that description barely scratched the surface. Sophie was striking in a way that was difficult to explain. She was tall and athletic, with bright green eyes that seemed capable of seeing straight through people. Her dark hair was cut in an asymmetrical style that framed her face perfectly. She wasn't conventionally beautiful in the way magazine covers define beauty. She was something else entirely. The kind of woman who naturally commanded attention the moment she entered a room. We didn't exactly get along at first. She assumed I was just another muscular security guard with nothing happening upstairs. I assumed she was an arrogant art world snob. During the event, I overheard her explaining an abstract painting to a potential buyer. When the customer walked away without purchasing anything, she rolled her eyes in frustration. Not everyone gets it, I said casually, not really intending to start conversation. She looked me up and down, taking in the security uniform. And you do? She asked. Not really, I admitted, but at least I'm not pretending I do. For the first time, I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Almost a smile. Honesty, she said. That's refreshing. Throughout the evening, I caught her watching me from time to time, not in a suspicious way. Not like she was making sure the security guard wasn't stealing artwork. There was genuine curiosity in her eyes. Meanwhile, I focused on my job. I monitored the entrances, watched the crowd, checked the exits, and kept an eye on the gallery's most expensive pieces. Professional, alert, invisible when necessary. As the event ended and the final guest departed, Sophie approached me. "So," she said, crossing her arms, "Uncle Frank says you're more than just a muscle." "Your uncle talks too much," I replied. She laughed, not a polite social laugh, a real one, the kind that instantly brightens a room. "Actually," she said, "he hardly talks at all, which is exactly why people pay attention when he does." Then she tilted her head. "He says you're back in school. Business management," I answered, "and a few specialized security certifications. That's an interesting combination. Tell me about it." What started as a brief conversation turned into hours. Before we realized it, it was nearly 2 in the morning. We talked about everything except my past. Art, travel, music, politics, life goals. She was intelligent, funny, passionate, and never afraid to challenge my opinions. At the same time, she genuinely listened when I challenged hers. When I finally stood up to leave because I had an early training session with a client the next morning, she handed me a business card. "I've got a security concern in my condo," she said. "The locks need upgrading. Maybe you could stop by and give me a consultation." The excuse was obvious, but I accepted it anyway. That consultation became dinner. Dinner became movie nights. Movie nights became entire weekends spent together. Sophie was unlike anyone I had ever dated. She was fiercely independent and deeply committed to her career. But beneath that strength was a softer side she only showed in quiet moments. She carried her own scars. Different from mine, but scars nonetheless. Maybe that's why we understood each other. Pain has a way of recognizing pain. For months, I avoided talking about my family. Whenever she asked questions, I created vague explanations. I told her my parents had died in a car accident. I claimed I was an only child. I lied because I was ashamed. Sophie knew I was hiding something. I could tell, but she respected my boundaries and never pushed. Frank, however, saw right through me. One afternoon at work, while we were preparing security plans for an upcoming event, he confronted me. "That girl is falling for you," he said, "and you're falling for her." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She deserves the truth before this goes any further. As usual, he was right. A few nights later, while we were having dinner at my apartment, I finally told Sophie everything. Every detail. The accusation, being disowned, the years of isolation, the homelessness, the humiliation, the pain, all of it. I expected her to pull away. I expected her to look at me differently. Part of me even expected her to wonder if Lily had been telling the truth. Instead, she reached across the table and took my hand. Then she said 3 words that changed everything. "I believe you." Other than Frank, nobody had ever said those words to me. Not once. The moment I heard them, something inside me broke. I sat there crying uncontrollably. Not quietly, not with dignity. I cried like a child. Sophie simply moved beside me, wrapped her arms around me, and let me release years of pain that I had been carrying alone. 2 years later, I asked her to marry me. I did it properly, down on one knee, in the same place where we had shared our first real date. My heart was pounding as I held the ring in my hand. She said yes. On our wedding day, Frank walked her down the aisle. Her father had passed away years earlier, and there was no one else she would have wanted in that role. Together, Sophie and I bought a small home in a quiet neighborhood. For the first time in a long time, we were building a real future. I completed my degree and eventually became a partner in Frank's security company. The business expanded steadily. What started as a local operation grew into regional contracts and eventually national accounts. Our reputation for professionalism, discretion, and reliability attracted larger and larger clients. At the same time, Sophie's artistic career flourished. Her work began appearing in major galleries. Collectors started paying significant amounts for her pieces. Doors continued opening for her. Life finally felt stable. We talked about having children. We made plans for the future. And for the first time in nearly a decade, I felt something I thought I had lost forever. I was genuinely happy. I was finally at peace. The nightmares had become less frequent over time. I could be around children again without feeling overwhelmed or panicked. I even reconnected with a few old college friends who had reached out after hearing fragments of the real story through mutual acquaintances. My past life started to feel distant, almost as if it had happened to someone else entirely. I still thought about my family sometimes. I wondered whether they had ever questioned Lily's version of events, whether any of them had felt regret for what they had done. But eventually, I came to accept that chapter of my life as closed. I had built a new family, people who chose me and stood by me. That was enough. Or at least, that's what I believed. It was a random Tuesday in March. I was in my office reviewing security protocols for an upcoming high-profile event for a billionaire tech CEO who was visiting for a conference and required discreet protection. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Sir, there's a call on line 1. A woman who refuses to give her name says it's a family emergency." My first instinct was Sophie or Frank. "Put her through." I picked up the phone. "Hello, this is Jake," I said. Not my real name. There was a pause, then a sob. "Jake, it's Mom." My entire body went cold. I hadn't heard her voice in 7 years. For a moment, I almost hung up, almost yelled. Instead, I forced myself to speak. "What do you want?" "Please don't hang up," she begged. "We need to talk. It's important." "We haven't spoken in 7 years," I replied. Nothing could be that important. My voice came out sharp and distant. Then she said it. Lily admitted she lied about everything. She made it all up. The world seemed to stop. 7 years of suffering. 7 years of rebuilding my life. Therapy. Panic attacks. Starting over from nothing. All because of a lie. I already knew it was true, but hearing her say it out loud still hit me like a blow. "Jake, are you there?" I hung up. I walked straight out of the office, told my assistant to cancel everything, and drove to Frank's house. After I explained what had happened, he simply nodded. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Yes, you do," he said calmly. "You just don't know if you want to face the consequences of it." He was right. Part of me wanted to cut them off completely and never look back. But another part of me needed answers. I needed to hear it from them, face to face. That night, Sophie agreed. "You need closure," she said gently. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. And Jake, this doesn't change anything between us." For 2 weeks, I ignored the calls and messages that started coming in from my mother, my father, and even relatives who had once cut me off without hesitation. I also spoke with my therapist during that time. Yes, I had one. I wasn't ashamed of it anymore. Eventually, I knew I had to face them, but on my own terms. I texted my mother. A public place. Coffee shop on Main Street. Sunday, 2 p.m. Just you, Dad, and Lily. I'll be there. With people. This is your only chance. Sunday arrived. Frank insisted on coming for support. Sophie stayed by my side, holding my hand so tightly it almost hurt. We arrived early. I chose a corner table with a clear view of every entrance and exit. Old security instincts that never fully disappear. My stomach was in knots. A part of me still expected them not to show up, or that this was some kind of trap. Sophie kept checking on me, her eyes full of worry. "We can leave whenever you want," she whispered. "Just say the word." At exactly 2 p.m., they arrived. My mother looked older, her hair now more gray than brown, her face marked by deep lines of worry. My father had lost weight. He looked almost fragile, his expensive suits replaced with simple khakis and a worn shirt. Lily, now 22, looked nothing like the teenager I remembered. Her face was thinner, her expression subdued, her usual dramatic energy completely gone. Her eyes stayed fixed on the ground. When my mother saw me, tears immediately filled her eyes, and she rushed forward with open arms. I stepped back. Sophie instinctively moved slightly in front of me. "Sit," I said flatly. No one spoke for what felt like an eternity. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Son, I'm not your son." I cut him off. "You made that clear 7 years ago. So talk. Why am I here?" My mother began crying again. My father looked shattered. Lily still couldn't meet my eyes. 3 months ago, my father said quietly, Lily called a family meeting. She admitted she lied about everything. I turned to her. "Look at me," I said. Slowly, she lifted her head. Her eyes were red and swollen. "What?" My voice didn't sound like my own. She hesitated, then took a shaky breath. "I was jealous," she said. "You were the perfect son. Everyone admired you, your achievements, your success. Mom and Dad gave you so much attention. I wanted that too. I wanted them to love me the same way. So you accused me of something that could have sent me to prison?" I said, my anger breaking through. "I didn't think it would go that far," she whispered. "I thought they'd just be angry with you, maybe punish you." But then everything escalated. People started asking questions, and I couldn't stop it. And it just kept going. Everyone was being so kind to me. I didn't know how to fix it. I turned to my parents. "And you?" I asked sharply. "You threw me out. You didn't even listen to me. No proof. Nothing." My father tried to explain himself. "We thought we were protecting her," he said quietly. "She was our little girl, and you were our son." The words snapped something inside me. I slammed my hand down on the table. The entire coffee shop went silent. Even the people at nearby tables pretended not to listen, but they were clearly paying attention now. "She wasn't even home over 4th of July weekend," Lily suddenly said. "I was at a baseball tournament in Denver. There were photos everywhere on social media." "Did you even check?" My mother covered her mouth, horrified. My father went pale. "You know what happened after you threw me out?" I said, my voice rising. "My truck broke down. I lost my apartment. I slept in a baseball equipment shed. I nearly died from exposure. I got beaten up by people who believed rumors about me. I stood on a bridge ready to jump because the people who were supposed to love me never asked a single question." I pulled out my phone. I showed them everything. Photos of my black eye and split lip after the bar fight. Images from the period I was homeless, thin, and worn down. Hospital records for my injuries. "This is what you did," I said, my voice breaking. "I was your son." Sophie tightened her grip on my hand. Frank rested a steady hand on my shoulder to keep me grounded. "We're so sorry," my mother cried. "We made a terrible mistake. We want to fix this." "Fix it?" I let out a bitter laugh. "How exactly? Give me back 7 years? Take away the nightmares? Undo the trauma of homelessness, being beaten, and standing on that bridge ready to die?" My father looked like he had aged a decade in minutes. "We want you to come home," he said weakly. "We want our family back." "That's not happening," I replied. "I already have a family." I looked at Sophie and Frank, people who actually stood by me. Then Lily spoke again, her voice shaking. "There's something else you should know." She explained that after her confession, everything had collapsed. My parents had cut her off financially and sold the BMW they had given her for her 16th birthday. She dropped out of her expensive private university and had to work retail while attending community college at night. My father's business had suffered from bad investments, forcing them to downsize from a large home to an apartment. My mother's reputation in the community had also fallen apart once the truth about Lily came out. "We need your help, Jake," my mother admitted, clearly ashamed. "Your father's business is failing. We're going to lose our home. Lily can't afford school. We've had to sell almost everything." That was when I understood. They didn't want forgiveness. They wanted money. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. "So let me get this straight," I said. "You destroy my life, disown me, leave me homeless. And now that I've rebuilt myself, you want me to save you?" "We're family," my father said quietly. "No, we're not." I stood up. "You made your choice 7 years ago. Now live with it. Please." Lily cried, tears streaming down her face. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but Mom and Dad shouldn't suffer for what I did." "They should suffer," I said coldly, "for what they did." I looked at my parents again. "I forgive Lily," I said. "She was a kid who made a horrible mistake. But you two were adults. You were supposed to protect both your children. Instead, you destroyed one of them without hesitation." I placed money on the table for the coffee. As we turned to leave, my mother grabbed my arm. "Please don't leave it like this," she begged. "What can we do? What do you want from us?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I want you to understand what it felt like," I said. "To lose everything. To be alone. To have no one believe you. Maybe then you'll understand what you did to me." Sophie, Frank, and I walked out together. As we reached the car, Frank squeezed my shoulder. "Proud of you, son. That was 2 years ago. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that my parents eventually lost their home. My father now works at a big box store. My mother cleans houses. Lily dropped out of school completely and moved to another state. Sometimes I think about reaching out. Sophie says that if I ever do, it should be the final step in healing. Not for them, but for me. Frank says it's my decision, and he'll stand by me either way. For now, my focus is my own family. Sophie is pregnant with our first child. We're expanding the security company into 3 more states. We're building something real, something no one can take away again. Edit 2. To answer common questions, yes, I considered pressing charges against Lily for false accusations, but the statute of limitations in my state has expired. No, I don't feel guilty about not financially supporting my parents. They made their choices. And yes, Sophie's pregnancy is going well. Edit 3. Some people say I should help Lily because she was just a kid. She was 15, not 5, old enough to understand consequences. She let me suffer for 7 years before admitting the truth. It said, I may reach out one day, just not yet. Edit 4. Regarding my parents meeting their grandchild, absolutely not in the delivery room. No babysitting either. Maybe eventually supervised visits if they take full responsibility, get therapy, and prove they won't manipulate or damage my child. Edit 5. Some are calling this story fake. That's fine. Believe what you want. I'm not here for attention. I'm here to process what happened and maybe help others who've been falsely accused. Edit 6. Thank you to everyone who shared similar experiences. It helps not feeling alone. And for those asking why I don't hate all women, no. I don't define an entire gender by one person's actions. My wife is a woman.